Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I am your host, Rob, broadcasting to you in the Pineless Palace just west of Orlando, Florida. I'm in Extreme Studios with two very special guests. I have from the Great Midwest, one RDV, and also from the Great Midwest, one Easy E, Eric Breen, joining us tonight to cover a very classic film that nobody really seems to talk about much called Laura from 1944. Gene Tierney, Danny Andrews, Clifton Webb, and of course, a very young, I hate to say it, sounds kind of interesting, Vincent Price. This, guys, is a movie that I thought I had seen, and I hadn't, so it's a first watch for me.
Yep.
One of the biggest things I'm going to say about it here at the beginning, just as an initial thought, is that when you really look at these old films and the constraints they had in terms of dressing and sexuality and the lack thereof and the way they would write stuff, it's amazing that they would cover a lot of adult films. That's one of the reasons why I like these spicy adult type of detective, whodunit kind of things, because it deals with all the seedy side of human nature that's always been around or whatever like that. So not necessarily a pretty film in that regard, but one that was just kind of sleazy from the get-go, and I loved it. RDB, was this a first watch for you?
It was a first watch for me until a couple days ago. I did not even know it existed until talking to Eric about it.
Yeah. What was your initial take?
Well, I thought that Jean was the guy at first, so I realized that Jean's actually her name.
Correct.
Because I was like, you got a guy named Dana, and you got and then you got a girl named Jean. I was like,
That's
what back the world is this? But going into this, I didn't know how much of a role Vincent Price is going to be in this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest fan of Vincent Price, but I thought he did really well in this. Standout character for me was Clifton Webb.
Oh yeah,
everyone else.
Okay. He's one of those names that like I've always heard of, but I couldn't pick him out of a lineup if you paid me $1 million. I mean, he's just not. But I agree with you. I thought he was pretty strong in it.
Yeah, he's the guy basically becomes her best friend after she goes to him, approach him during dinner, which is another something I liked about this movie, because it reminded me of the Twilight Zone episode with Leslie. I think it's Leslie Nielsen, where someone is approached during lunch difference, So I love that back then, back in the 40s, people on their lunch breaks would go out to these fancy little restaurants and they have their meal and then they go back. So since 1944 is to get the same kind of setup here, and she goes to pitch a pen, like basically get endorsement from him, and she won't leave alone. And he's so annoyed, he's very rude to her. Clifton Webb's rude to her, and I love it because then he can't get her out of his mind. And so he goes to see Laura at her office, and then eventually he basically prims and I wanted to say grooms her, but basically teaches her how to be liked by people, introduce her, and she becomes a socialite. And then they become best friends, and then you get Charlton Heston comes in and one day and ruins it all. But by trying to hit on her, you find out he's a kind of a con artist himself. A guy who has no wealth, but let's the line on say that he actually is wealthy. And it's just Judith Anderson plays the woman who is in love with Vincent Price, but Vincent Price wants to be with Laura, and Laura is confused because she doesn't know who she wants. And you got the jealous Clifton Webb, who's her friend, who's hired of because he likes having things a certain way. He's a writer, and then one day, it starts off the movie. Basically, the movie starts off is that she's dead. She's been murdered. And you got Dana Andrews coming here. He's got to solve the murder. And along the way, he's kind of falling in love with the idea of Laura, as he gets to know her through her diaries and her journal stuff. And
yeah, it's one of those first movies that I can recall where, again, talking about somebody, you get an idea of what it's like, and because you have no experience with her. But of course, she's got an older guy that wanted to be more than just friends, helped out with her career, just like you said. She's got the playboy kind of guy on the hook in Vincent Price, who's really, it's not really a love triangle, but it's always the older woman that puts a young guy up like that too, the cougar, if you will.
To get the maid who you can't trust because she admits that she wiped on glasses and stuff. She'll be tampered evidence because she didn't want anybody basically the thing that Laura was a drunkard, stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, who do you trust? And then, well, before we get to the big reveal, Eric, what number watch is this for you?
Like 3.
3? Do you notice still anything new in your watches?
I don't know how much yeah, in this, how much. I mean, it's more like, oh yeah, that's what happened. Because yeah, you watch enough movies, and they all
Yeah.
Like the next one we're going to be doing. Every time I watch that, I find something new. But yeah, this was this was more like refamiliarizing myself with this movie.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, you're the one that mentioned this, and you're a big fan of these older movies. What stands out to you as being really significant for this film?
Okay. Two things. I don't necessarily agree with this being a noir movie because it has some of the tropes like the flashbacks, the mystery, but it's fairly well lit throughout, other than when they go to the cabin.
Yes, I agree with you on this.
It has a happy ending. Noirs aren't supposed to have happy endings because Mark and Laura get together at the end of the movie because they've fallen for each other.
I agree with you. It's not a noir film, but it has noir tropes.
Yeah, and the other thing, I'm sorry, I can watch Superman and believe a man can fly. I cannot believe Clifton Webb would have any sexual interest in a woman. But this is from an era where he's known from a series of movies called Mr. Belvedere.
Mm-hmm.
He is also the original Cheaper by the Dozen, where he's played, men, that are married with children. And I'm sorry, he's the same in everything he's in. But then again, I said, Waldo Lydecker is one of the most famous characters in movie history. Certainly, since I'm in the minority thinking this is not a noir movie. He does chew up the scenery. Vincent Price as Shelby Carpenter is more subdued, but in those days Vincent Price was in very important movies in his early career. He did several movies with Bette Davis. I mean, he was in big movies. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until later in his career that he found his niche, but I said, Judith Anderson, whose name his character I can never remember, who's in love with Shelby, but I said this was and the other thing is that even though it was fairly early in his career, Otto Preminger just knew how to make a movie. So there's no dead space in this movie.
Yeah, and Otto's a name that I think old school people, they're really hardcore. I mean, I've heard the name, again, couldn't pick him out of a lineup or anything, and I don't recognize his particular style, but watching, it's clear that he can shoot it, right? Obviously there's a lot of detail going on, and it's got some fancy, socialite stuff with dinners and jewelry and all that, but that's kind of the charm of watching some of these older movies. I think that for me, your comment about the older effeminate kind of guy wanting to be her, he's like, I can believe that in certain situations, and it happens, I think, more than what people want to admit. And I know some people might go, ooh, gross, but that's just the reality of it, whether it's Hugh Hefner or just other people. I mean, you can't tell me Pierce Brosnan in the 60s wasn't pulling something in his 20s on the film. You wouldn't believe it. But I agree with you. He just doesn't come across as somebody that would have a chance at it. It's more makes me think of her as interested in somebody that can do something with their career, as opposed to she's one of these young innocent types that has a platonic male friend who just happens to be older and is the father figure. That's a bunch of bullshit, and I think that's where it's gotten dumbed down over the years. Now, RDV, you were going to say something, I think, about his character too. I think just now. What were you going to say?
I was going to say about Clifton Webb, as far as Eric made a comment about how it's kind of not, you can't really believe it though that he'd be interested in a female. And honestly, I got the kind of vibe was more like possessive. It wasn't really like he's in love. It was just an idea that he had someone to talk to. He felt the routine with her, and he got jealous if someone was taking away his new toy.
Because he's so arrogant that he thought that just his attention was enough. I kind of want to make the Clifton Webb joke because he is, like I said, big shock. He was a gay man.
Really?
But the character was, like I said, but he played arrogant as well as anybody. And
yes.
This movie is like a tour de force of his arrogance.
It was weird watching Clifton Webb because he sounded and acted more like Vincent Price did in his later movies. You know, he I think he stood out the whole entire movie. He said you had you could for Vincent Price and this role here, you could have had anybody else in there. And as I said, I wasn't really a fan of Vincent Price in this movie, his acting, but because Clifton Webb just literally he stole the scene every time he was in there, you know. And I love, as I also loved as far as like I said, we talk about the movie too. It's not just the characters. This is 1944, so they're doing it on the soundstage stuff, you know. So when they have the snow walking, you see Clifton Webb walking the snow. You can obviously it's a snow machine, and they're blowing wind, you know, make it look like it's a blizzard. And then when it's raining, how it pours. Every time I see when it rain like this, when they have the Reinhardt rain this, I always think of Fred Astaire, you know, singing in the rain, and how they did that stuff. So I always get a kick out of that in these older movies. Gene Kelly. But yeah, I said I love the old Hollywood tricks and stuff like that, you know. But
I was going to say real quick, the Waldo Lydecker character, the reason why he was so powerful was he was a columnist, and in those days, columnists could make or break you. Like if you ever seen like Citizen Kane, like a couple people that have playing themselves like Hedda Hopper, and Walter Winchell. In fact, there's a great movie called Sweet Smell of Success where Burt Lancaster plays a guy named J.J. Hunsaker that is Walter Winchell, in a movie role, and showed how much power he had, because a good paragraph in one of his columns would make you. A bad one, or worse, being ignored by him, could break you. And Clifton Webb's character, that is so. Lydecker is like I said, a powerful man of the press.
When Dana Andrews first goes into walks into his room or the apartment or house where Clifton Webb was in there, and then he's in the tub, and he's like, "Can you have me a robe?" He stands up, and I'm just thinking like, because I'm glad that they didn't show up because back the time, but I'm just thinking it's like. I don't think Dana Andrews was too fond of looking at Clifton Webb, but it was interesting because he's in there. He's like, here, because he's in the tub. Come in here. And he's interviewing him, and he's got his little typewriter or whatever, on his little board. Goes across the tub, and then he's handing him papers. I'm thinking, like, your hands are all wet. You're touching papers. It's just.
I gotta say, Rob, were either of you surprised when she turns up alive halfway through the movie?
The thing about the setup at the beginning that drew my attention was the fact it almost seems like a whodunit, but I initially wasn't getting into it because, and I've said this with RDV sometimes, and it's a thing for me. I'm not saying it's this way for everybody, but if I contrast this to, say, Humphrey Bogart, right? I know he, as a detective, it revolves around him. Here with all these characters at the beginning, I'm going, why are they even talking to the detective? They don't need to. They just talk to police. If they don't, we don't have a movie. So it was weird because it would have been different to me if maybe like Waldo or something was like, hire the detective, talk to him. They changed a little bit so we can think, okay, maybe I should anchor myself to this guy. Instead, I felt kind of removed from all of them. So when she showed up about halfway through, because that's one of the rules of movies, even going back this far, is you can say somebody died, you can hear a scream, you can see something going into them, or you can see the gun shooting, but unless you've got a body and unless it's burning, and even then, it's always in the back of my mind it could be there. And it's not because of, like, say, Vertigo, where you have a twin or other things over the years that have accustomed me to them, but I want to see that person murdered on screen in one take, and then they're dead or something, and then we go to it. And it's a little frustrating because I can see where initially it's exciting to get drawn into this, which I think is what made me really kind of pay attention to the movie a lot early. But then halfway through, when she kind of showed up, I was like, is it a bait and switch? I mean, it was kind of probably necessary for what they're doing, but it really took what air was in there that was kind of filling up the balloon and left what little air was in there out for me. I'm not saying I hated it, but I definitely didn't like it. It didn't add anything for me. It wasn't like it was just like, really? It just felt weak to me.
For me, I had the complete opposite because one, we never saw the body. We're just told about it, shotgun to the face. And I'm thinking like, okay. So her coming in as like, added it more, basically added more confusion to the movie because they really wanted you to believe that maybe it was Julie Janison who was in a fit of rage, who was jealous of Laura, or was it Vincent Price, or was it the girl that it was supposedly from her office that was having dinner with Vincent Price? That was a jealous lover.
It's just that it's built on a false premise, and as a viewer watching it, I don't know that there was really that many clues that would allow you to kind of take a moment and go, wait a minute, that doesn't seem true, because if that were, then this person said this is a lie. Oh, I caught them in one with this person, so I think it might be that or whatever. And that's one of the frustrating things. If you're going to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, dangle all the clues right in front of you about how it is.
Didn't miss any clues. I said everything was.
That's my point, though.
Yeah.
You had no chance of knowing that she could have been alive.
Yeah. And that's shock factor, because now if she's alive, who murdered that girl? Was it her? And why would she come back? But you're like, okay, well, obviously she had nothing to do with it. She was out of town. But then you hear the reports, that she says her radio's broken. She lies, and she keeps lying to Jane Andrews about things. He tells her uncle here, but then she goes talks to Vincent Price. You see the shotgun that's in her little cottage over, and you're just wondering, was this planned? Are they both in on it? It's like I said, I love this because it added more to the mystery of and kind of led you away because first you thought we're led to believe, especially through everyone else, that hey, Clifton Webb could have done it because Clifton Webb was jealous. He done this. He tried scaring off her past lovers, and he really didn't like Vincent Price. Is he doing it that somebody he'd kill her? And I tried to frame Vincent Price, So I liked it, and I just said there's a lot of movies that I'll be halfway through and I'm looking at my phone because I'm just so freaking bored. This was one I had my phone down. I was watching Reddit, and I was so glued to the screen that I didn't realize that I had like in a whole hour had gone by already, and then 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it had to unfold this way. There's two ways to do this: the way they did it, or that it really was her. But then that movie kind of falls apart because the way they the pieces came together, and they found Waldo's shotgun, and he decided that he had to kill her after all, even though he was like so shocked to see her alive. Now this is also a movie that could only have been made up to a certain point, because I like to talk about how in older movies finding a phone wires being cut are so important to plots.
Mm-hmm.
In modern day, you can shoot somebody's face off, but you're going to identify them in hours.
Yeah, with dental records.
Yeah, so that's even if those aren't there, there's DNA, there's blah blah blah. But so this it was believable in 1944. When you watch it, you have to set your mind
and plus
to that era to.
Plus, the maid admitted to wiping down cleaning things. So is she involved somehow?
That doesn't surprise me, because I think when you look at the very beginning, what do you see? You've got independent contractor who's the detective, right? He's kind of supposed to be the removed party. You've got, to your point, RDV, you've got the maid.
He's a homicide detective.
You've got who's the first person we meet? The most powerful person, right? The columnist who's got the most stroke and all that. And then you've got Playboy saying Vincent Price. And no matter what goes on or how they stretch this out and she reappears, you go, who's the one that has the most energy, the most resources and juice to do something and not get caught or to get away with it? And it's clearly him from the beginning. So to me, that really wasn't a big surprise at the end, despite her showing up you know, and going, oh, okay, she's back. Like I say, I was a little bit let down because it seemed kind of obvious once she showed up. Okay, because it's like a resource game. Who's got the ability to do these things? And it's just, I don't know. I liked watching it.
Yeah.
I thought it had a nice look to it. I know I couldn't tell you if you watch the type of movie, look for these things, and you might know it's an Otto Preminger type film. But I do really appreciate watching these old films because even though they're black and white, the way they're shot and everything looks clean and pristine too. The way they stage a room, the way people are dressed up, the small nooks and crannies. I think it's that 4:3 aspect ratio. So they usually have something going in the background. You see a lot of high society stuff and people moving from that around. You don't see a lot of other stuff unless it's the gritty, gutty side of dark side of town that we see in some films that are other detective ones, which I do like too. It's a really good film. I just felt that the not the directing of it, but the story, the way it was told, was just a little bit quick. I don't like that kind of bullshit. And I'll say this, and this will be my last kind of thing on the film. Recently, you know, I rewatched the first Scream movie from 1996, Wes Craven's been around since the early 70s, forever. But the thing I always enjoyed and appreciated about watching Scream over and over again is there's a lot of clues early on that you know who the people are. And the clue during the opening scene where the girl gets hung up, you go, there's no way one person could do that. You know, mechanically it would take two plus the timing and stuff. So in your head, there's two people, maybe. At least that's what I think. But then the way, like, you see the two people that are responsible for it, it's not that they dress the same, but they have like the same color shoes and everybody else has a different color shoe. And it's like that almost every single time you see these guys. And when you go back and rewatch it, you go, that's fucking clever. And it's just, this movie did not have that for me. And so I go, okay, this was just a really, really polished B film, you know, done polished as an A film, if you will. I'm not knocking it. It just, that was weak to me.
Okay, I think I'm gonna differ a little bit in that I don't know if the movie wasn't necessarily set up to be like a Sherlock Holmes, well, yes and no, because the clues were in the middle of the movie when she came back in the reactions. Waldo's reaction was, choke, gasp, faint. And we go, okay, there's two ways to take that. Was, oh my God, my dear friend is alive when I thought she was dead. Or wait a second, how did he kill that bitch?
Yeah.
And you don't realize.
Man, shotgun to the face, not good enough.
Yeah, because they said, they made it plain that it was dark. And and then the rest of the movie is like figuring out that it was him. But like I said, I thought it was a pretty good, red hair. The first time I saw it, I didn't pick up on that. I took it as, he's still alive, and he's just shocked. But
yeah, well, the fact that I love the fact that now we got the detective, or homicide detective Dana Andrews' character is kind of like when he's sitting, he's kind of distraught. He's reading her letters, and he's kind of like he's sitting there drinking, and he passed on the chair. She shows up, and I'm thinking like, okay, she's alive, but who was the other girl? Or was, because this could have been another way, totally another way, and made it more a comedy. Oh, that was my twin sister, identical twin sister, that was killed.
Shotguns in the face are always good for laughs.
Yeah. Shocking, right?
Say real quick.
It was a blast.
The Tomb of Dracula magazine that Marvel published in the late 70s did a story based on this, where it was basically the same setup, but of course the Laura character was bitten and turned by Dracula and comes back and tries to, munch on the stories Mark McPherson. So I thought that was it's a pretty cool story. And
look, my final thought, good film, definitely worth watching. I can see why it's a classic thing. I do like the falling in love with the thing that you're watching or whatever. It's kind of that old philosophical thing, when you look into the abyss looks back into you. You're not the same if you step in the same river because you and the river's path have both changed. All that philosophical horse shit written in all these different languages and cultures over the years. But it's true. If you're a detective, how could you not fall in love with Rachel Ward or some of these other women that show up? I mean, that's just how it is. So yeah, I liked it. I just, the way it was told, whatever. Final thoughts for you guys?
Final thoughts for this. I said I really enjoyed it, and I was going to comment on the fact that I watched a movie called The Thin Man, and one of the things instead in the 40s when they had the party for the Christmas stuff, all the drinks, silverware. I like seeing this here when they had the party here too. So I love seeing everything, the way people dress, from the coats or just her outfits. She kept changing her outfits and stuff, and she was breathtaking in the photo. So when it's so easy that believe that Dana Andrews fell in love with her, I
would agree.
And I also say this, JFK, you dropped the ball. You could have got with her. Instead, you let Daddy tell you no.
Yeah.
And Eric, this is your choice and recommendation, so I want to thank you for it here publicly and all that too. Final thoughts?
Well, I said, to me, it's very enjoyable. Like I said, not as noir as other folks may say. And I think when I'm, any complaints I might have, I then remember this movie is 81 years old now.
Yep.
I mean, that was a long time ago. And, the way the noir was still in its relative infancy in these days. So, like I said, it may have had some flaws depending on how you look at it. I personally enjoyed it all the way through and would recommend Gene Tierney's follow-up movie made the next year, Leave Her to Heaven, if you want to see a completely different side of Gene Tierney.
As a saying, I would be glad to have her obsessed over me.
unless you're a little crippled kid in the lake. I'll leave it at
Timmy, no.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Laura from 1944. I want to thank RDV and Eric for joining me tonight to cover this extreme classic, as we like to call it here on the Extreme Movie Show. And if you have any that you'd like us to take a look at and review, check our archives. And if we want us to do something new or redo it, by all means, just reach out. We definitely love doing it too. So again, thanks to Eric for that. For Eric and RDV, everybody involved here at the Extreme Movie Show, good night now.
Also, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of the movie down below. Later, guys.